What is up, folks? Welcome back to the Emulsion Podcast. My name is Justin Khanna, and this is the first episode of Season 2. My guest today is Dozfy. If you aren't familiar with him from Season 1, he actually had 2 episodes. Somehow I managed to invite him back once already in the first 100 episodes, which was great because he is one of the few people in Seattle that I consider a great creative peer. Him and I like to bounce ideas off of each other. He is also very entrepreneurial himself, and we get into that in this episode for sure. This is also the first international episode, I'm pretty sure, that has been recorded. Him and I, we say it was a super secret project in Japan. We were effectively doing something for Visit Seattle, which is already out on his Instagram page if you want to check that out. He was artist, I was videographer, and we start off this episode by doing a bit of a challenge that David Chang poses for everybody to do if they find themselves in Japan, which we taste through a couple of different things. If you have a trip to Japan coming up, I highly recommend you listen to this. This could effectively be its own standalone piece of content, but then we get into it probably around the, I want to say 25-minute mark is when we start to get into things about being creative, talking to chefs, pitching new ideas to people who don't necessarily believe in you quite yet, but you want to collaborate, and how to get past no in that regard, and so much more. He's such a creative force, and I'm very excited to have him on the show again. Please enjoy our interview.
I don't know if it sounds like me.
It does. I think so. I think you're also different, like, you're a different voice on camera sometimes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
But we all are. So many people have said that to me, where it's like, you hear your own voice and it doesn't really exactly sound like you.
But in your podcast, I know it does sound like you.
Well, that's also because I've like tailored my voice over the past 2 years to sound like, maybe not sound like me, but like I feel more comfortable in my own skin talking on camera, where I don't feel like I have to adjust my voice so much, and I don't have to not characterize it, but like, I don't know. I don't have to switch pitch. I don't have to, yeah, it's me. It's just me.
No, I believe you.
So, have I told you what's going to happen with Season 2 of the podcast?
No.
So much of Season 1 was me getting better at interviewing, but I don't want to get crippled by trying to find better, quote-unquote, better interviewees. I feel like so much of what I do is trying to find people who are, like, in the process of doing something. And so for Season 2, which I'm calling episode 101 through 199...
Okay.
I'm basically going to go spend a lot of time checking back in with some of the people that I've already interviewed.
Oh, so like following up.
Yeah, exactly. And doing like another interview with like all these people. Like interviewing Derek again is going to be great because like his restaurant's closed down and he has a new space now. And like Kim, how is she doing after a year and a half of being open?
Those are 2 different trajectories too.
Exactly. But the funny thing about you is you're the only person who showed up twice in Season 1.
Oh man, I feel honored.
I mean, it was natural. It was a natural fit because our first one went so well. You were the first one where I really sat down to edit that interview, and I was like, whoa, there's like a lot of stuff here, especially for the creative ones, like the ones who who like the artistic process, who like finding inspiration in unlikely places, who like kind of the unknown of taking on a new project and not knowing if the medium is going to work, not knowing how the audience is going to respond. And like, I thought there was a lot of philosophical stuff in there.
Yeah. I every time I watch it, I'm like, oh man, we went deep.
That's true.
A little more philosophical than I thought we did.
Should we start there? Do you want to give an update? Do you want to talk about what's all over this table right now?
I think we should start with what we ate on the table.
I agree.
Only because I started off literally on the table with the menu art.
Right. There you go.
And you start from behind the kitchen. So it's a good common place.
Start with the food. Okay, so for everybody that's only listening, we have a table in front of us of a bunch of wrappers and plastic containers because we just destroyed a whole slew of Japanese convenience store delicacies. And so do you want to tell everybody where this idea came from for you? Because this was like something you really wanted to do.
Yes.
Because we're in Tokyo.
Yes. First, kudos to Justin to say we should eat before we do the podcast. Because
we almost did all of this eating and trying and testing on camera, and that would have not been great.
Yeah, that would have been terrible. There would have been a lot of more rappers and chewing than actually talking. So I am a big fan of David Chang's podcast when he talks about food. I mean, I'm a fan of it in general, but food is like, yes, yes, yes. And then the fact that it coincided that at the end of his Renee podcast about eating at the convenience stores in Japan, especially Tokyo, I was like, oh, yes, we should do this. One on two counts is like, I think convenient food, the way we perceive it in the U.S. it's completely different. It's just like something quick. I feel like people view it convenient food like one tier lower than fast food.
Right. Like it's not even an alternative. It's a degrading thing.
Right. Like you're either
it's less than a meal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But here it's not the case.
Here's not the case. And it's fascinating, especially since we went and we see the culture behind how convenient foods are taken. And then just it gives you kind of a perspective of what is common or what is like comfort food in a group and then in Japan, and we're being, transported to this new environment, and it's like, hey, what do we know about this? Because it's very common. And so the recommendations on David Chang's podcast, especially since we were limited on how much we can eat, is we went to Lawson's, got the chicken nuggets, and he said everything, which we saw there was a lot. And
there was a variation as well.
Yeah, extremely. And then sandwiches, which is another, if you think about it, American concept.
Especially with the white bread. And,
right. Actually, it should be English too, really. Right. More English concept.
Yeah, that's true. With toast. And
yeah. And then the drinks, and then what your forte is, and I'm really glad you did, is desserts.
Yeah.
Desserts
and the onigiri. We got 3 kinds of onigiri.
That's right. Well. That is right.
So why do you think that is? Why? Well, part of it is population density, right? But I feel like part of the reason why, especially Americans, get so impressed when they come to Japan and they see the quality of food that comes out of these places is because the brand is essentially the same if you go into a 7-Eleven, right?
Yeah.
It would be the same as if you were to go to South America and you sat down at a McDonald's and they gave you a cloth napkin. Yeah. You would be like, whoa, this is crazy, because you associate 7-Eleven with gas stations and Slurpees, and in Japan, it's like really nicely cooked rice and pork katsu sandwiches. Right. I don't know. Do you have a theory behind that, or should we not spend too much time on that and just kind of discuss the?
I mean, the only theory I have, and it's not like a brand new theory. I get it from other stuff, and lately I've been listening to a lot of entrepreneur podcasts, and it's all to do with like customer satisfaction.
Right.
So first impression, what do you expect, and what it leaves on you after you leave, and I think this food or any other food comes in. Like if you think about comfort food, you want something that makes you taste good. It's quick and affordable, and then afterwards just like happy. Right. And so I think this is a perfect example. Hence the name convenience stores.
Right. We don't have to go into that. Let's chat through what we liked, what we didn't like, and just kind of share some thoughts. So we started off eating these chicken nuggets. We got 4 different kinds. 2 of them were more, I'm going to say more on the bland side. There was a dark meat one that was plain breaded, fried. These were all cold, by the way. So plain breaded fried leg meat and plain breaded fried breast meat or tenders meat. And what I said with those 2 was that like this is like stuff you want to feed your kids or the really picky eaters that are still adults, and you want to have those. And then there was another kind of quote unquote tier of these crispy cold fried chicken that was more on the spicy side, and it was evident by the red label on the plastic container. These were above and beyond for me. They were delicious. Do you have any thoughts on those?
I mean, I agree with you with the choices. For sure, though, I think the most unique comment, and I thought was you hit it on the head, is just with like the 2 that we didn't like, but you said it's good for kids.
Yeah.
It's almost like, okay, like we're not like trying to reverse engineer the whole thing, but you nailed it. It's just like, okay, what would a kid like to eat? And it's like the shape of that nugget. Oh, sure. The all white meat.
That's true.
Versus,
this was kind of like not a cube, but like a deformed. It was like a chicken nugget almost, but it was a little more hearty.
It reminded me of Chick-fil-A little bites, but if you they were on steroids. Right. They were huge.
Add some beef to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to sandwiches, we got the egg salad sandwich, which David Chang suggested we get. and then we also got a pork katsu sandwich. So you lead the charge on your thoughts on those.
I think David Chang nailed on the head with that egg sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I mean, this is just the nerdy side of me. It was just a good ratio of egg salad. It was creamy.
Right.
You felt the nice egg in it. We kind of the protein portion.
I think the thing that sometimes, maybe this is a nod back to that food for kids thing, is that if you gave the project to any chef in the U.S. to make an egg salad sandwich, I don't think you would get a sandwich like that because it would be seen as too simple, would be seen as too safe. So for everybody listening, it was literally crustless white bread and creamy egg salad with like tiny chunks of white, like diced white, but everything else was like super creamy. And I think the problem that you get when you bring not necessarily American chefs per se, but like people who have more to say with their food is that there was no diced onion in that. There was no scallions on it. There was no like bits of bacon in it. There was no chili, right? There was like the paprika that you get with deviled eggs.
Right.
There was no, I don't know, like apple cider vinegar sauce or cabbage or anything that you would associate with something else like a potato salad or even like a deviled egg or a nicer. It was just egg salad on white bread. Like it was very smooth. It was very one-dimensional, but that simplicity is what made it so good, I think.
See, and then you bring 2 points that I've always struggled with. One, I can only rate as a visual artist. So as a chef, it's like thinking, okay, this is too easy for egg sandwich. Why does it, because it's so easy, deter you to make something, like you said, simple, but execute well? And like, it's an egg sandwich. Well, like an omelet. An omelet's...
That's true. That's true.
Like crazy hard to make. So like, I can relate as a when I was a younger artist, and like, I wanted to do so much and say so much, but to me, and I'm not sure if anybody know like my path from being an artist, like doing the menu art, it is quite simple.
Right.
I'm just drawing on a menu.
Sure.
But it makes me feel good, and my audience likes it, and I'm not gonna stop because it still brings me joy. But I don't care if a critic says, "Oh, you don't have much to say to it," stuff like that, because they're not my audience.
And clearly, the audience that does receive it and likes it really likes it.
Right.
Like I got some great footage or photos of you this trip giving menu art out.
Yeah.
And the people are so appreciative, right? Yeah, I think it's because that simple, generous act.
Yeah.
Okay, so the pork katsu sandwich, we both were a little bit disappointed, right?
Yes.
And I referenced the fact that you might be referring to a reference point, which is like the hot pork katsu sandwich or like a beef katsu sandwich, which, I mean, we both in Seattle go to Adana for.
Right.
But this was cold. It had like a dab of mustard on the bread, same white bread as the egg salad sandwich.
Yeah, teriyaki too, right?
Yeah, like a spicy katsu sauce, tonkatsu sauce. I agree with you where it wasn't stellar. It wasn't amazing. But if there was a place in Seattle where I could go get that, and I was kind of in a rush between coffee meetings, I would probably I would probably on occasion go for that for lunch, only because it's so affordable. It's so affordable and it's so readily available. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on the pork katsu?
I mean, I agree with you. I think it was missing a component. And this is just my art way of thinking is, okay, the bread was the same as the egg sandwich, right? So what was in between the bread changed how we perceive it.
Right.
And if you're taking, and this is go back to your original topic with the egg sandwich. If it's simple, executed well, it should be good.
But when we talk about improving it, we talk about adding things. So that's an interesting.
I think we're in different camps. Like the egg sandwich, I would not add it, and you may have thought you could have added something, right?
Yeah, maybe. It's not necessarily that I would add something. I'm just dictating the fact that I found beauty in its simplicity, and that someone could come along and say that there's nothing special about this egg sandwich because it's not using Japanese pork in the you know what I mean?
To me, that is such a human thing to do in terms of when something's wrong, we analyze it.
Right.
And it's either we add or subtract, or we kind of find explanation.
As opposed to thinking that it's something wrong with the viewer or like how you're perceiving it.
I think that's the difficulty I've been struggling with is why is something so simple so good? Like, is there an innate emotional quality to it?
Like it's comforting.
Yeah. And then and I can't define it.
Sure. No, it's a good rhetorical question of like why does this?
So the katsu sandwich, our reference point that we were using is Adonis, and I find that very comforting.
Right. And it's also very simple.
Yeah. But then you brought it up to the point, like, if we ate the current katsu sandwich from Lawson, it was warm, would we be talking about different?
Sure.
So I find it interesting.
Yeah,
I don't have more to add because
right.
I'm still contemplating about it.
Moving on to onigiri. So we got one that was salmon and sesame, one that was called a grilled rice ball, which was basically an onigiri shape, but it was coated in teriyaki sauce.
Yeah.
So there's no protein inside, no seaweed wrapped around it. It's just a grilled rice ball. And then the last one was wrapped in seaweed, but it had tuna mayo inside. And I think that one was my favorite, the tuna mayo one.
Yeah, tuna mayo is by far. Only
because it had the right mix of like protein plus sauce, and the seaweed was kind of nice. Made you think of kind of like those sushi roll vibes.
It just merged really well here. But like with it was tuna with mayo, right?
Tuna mayo, yeah.
So we had fat and protein, and then
seaweed and rice,
right?
Yeah,
and so it
felt more like a cohesive thing.
Yeah,
sure.
Versus it was just the other one was just rice
and sauce
or
rice with there was no like. I commented on the salmon and sesame one, and I said it was beautifully like dispersed because everything was evenly mixed, and it should have eaten really well, but it was very underseasoned.
Right,
it's underseasoned. There wasn't enough exciting textures to make it fun. There wasn't a sauce to add any acidity. Yeah, I didn't really enjoy that one. Which is funny because we are choosing the most complex onigiri as our favorite as opposed to the most simple one. Back to that rhetorical question.
Well, I view it the same way, though, as like you said, it worked cohesively.
Sure.
And it goes that emotional quality. Like, I took a bite. Oh, yeah, I get everything.
I understand this.
And then egg sandwich, same thing. Katsu, I'm missing something.
Right. Okay. Dessert, we had something called a cream bread.
Oh, that was so good.
That was so good. This very weird cartoon drink, which was a lemon and yogurt beverage. It worked just like a bubble tea. You stab a straw through it.
It tastes like baby food.
It tasted like baby food. It was not great. I'm going to echo your praise on the cream bread because that was also really delicious. And then the last thing we got was this. We were looking at strawberries all morning at the Tsukiji market, and they had a chocolate they called it strawberry chocolate. So it's from Meiji, and it's chocolate on the outside and some sort of strawberry filling on the inside, but it's just a basic chocolate bar. Delicious.
And whoever listening, that was the last move by Justin, and it was a killer move.
I grabbed it we were almost late to check out, but I
like how I rushed you, and you're like, I'm just going to pick the cheaper one.
Yeah. I did just pick the cheaper one. So yeah, it was great. I really, really enjoyed that. Should we move on to drinks? I actually got advertised on Instagram for Pepsi's version of the like Pepsi with cherry blossoms. And I was really hoping that they would have that so I could get it and we could taste it, but they didn't. But they had this one called Mitsuya Cider, which, judging by the cherry blossoms and kind of like the cream soda-y-ness of it.
I mean, the bottle looks like a Formula One run racing bottle.
That's true.
It's got waves. It's got blossoms blowing in the
air. Yeah. It's got a funny red and blue logo with a white background. Yeah. It was great. Drinks. This drink was fine. It was a nice differentiation from American sodas, and I don't know. I don't necessarily think that it paired, quote unquote, really well with anything. I didn't hate it though.
No, I think that was fine.
Do you want to talk about your soda?
So I'm kind of embarrassed to say I was looking for a soda, but all the other sodas is like we were familiar with. like Coke, Sprite, stuff, and then some kind of. Or I was looking at this carbonated drink that was made by Asahi, but I picked it because of the anime characters.
There are cartoons all over this bottle.
And this is not an advertising plug or anything. This is the Gray and Blue Fantasy, and I'm just like, I just gotta try it because they're probably advertising to people who are playing,
are fans of. But it was strange because I couldn't pick out a flavor per se to say, like, it's not that I've never had that flavor before, but I mean, if you told me that was caramel colored flavored soda, I would be like, yeah, that's probably right. Did you pick out any flavor notes? I mean, you said citrus maybe.
I felt a little citrus. The carbonation was really strong on it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I just picked over the bottle, which is typical of me.
And well, so the last one that I picked out, and this is something that I like to do in Japan as a half Indian person, because the Japanese also love their yogurt.
Yeah.
Which is great. And so this is like it's like a Calpico, but it's flavored with orange. So it's like a yogurt drink with orange.
Wait. And curious, you said it reminds you of like lassi or something?
It doesn't remind me of lassi because lassi is a different texture. It's a different level of sweetness. It's a different body, like on your palate. But the idea of using lactic acid to season things and kind of adding a little bit of sweetness to it, the Middle East does that in a great way.
Right.
But from my knowledge, the Chinese don't do it.
No,
Thai people don't do it, right? Like, but the Japanese, for whatever reason, they do it, and I think that's very, very interesting. Like, this could be condensed milk and orange. This could be, I mean, I don't know. Pick any other dairy and orange, but for whatever reason, it's yogurt. And I don't know the history of Calpico. Somebody can comment and tell me all about it, which I would actually love to hear about. But I think it's delicious.
I was gonna say because in Vietnamese and Chinese culture, they do have like kind of this sweet like rice water drink, which kind of reminds me of it. But I think in these times, it reminds me more of like a milk, like some kind of milk tea, bubble tea concoction.
I can agree with that.
But that is my favorite. I was surprised that you picked it out because it was also made by Asahi, and I was like, okay. And ironically, it was the best drink I think we had of all four, right? We had 4 drinks. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. So overall, I think we could have maybe gotten a little more expansive with going to like a 7-Eleven or a different convenience store to get some stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think that this serves as a really good kind of like 20-minute primer for anyone going to Tokyo to kind of get a sense of, I've never been to a Japanese convenience store. What do I get? What do I look for? What do I ask about? What do I look at and not look at? Mm-hmm. I think we did a really good job of getting some stuff that was good and being able to share our thoughts on that, and also some stuff that was like not so great and that you should probably avoid. Yeah. But again, everyone's palate is different, and you might love this weird cartoon baby lemon yogurt baby food. And you might also be someone like, that's another thing that's really interesting, is that like if you're here in Japan and you really just want to see the sights and experience the culture, but you don't like ramen, you don't like spicy food, you could probably get away with eating at convenience stores, having simple rice with teriyaki sauce and crispy chicken tenders, and be super happy.
I think, and let's go back to our original point, why we did it. I heard it from David Chang, and you were like, "Yeah, let's do it." Mm-hmm. And kudos to David Chang to bring it up, because I think it was actually a fun little foodie adventure that the cost was incredible. 2,700
yen, which equates to like 24 US dollars.
Yeah.
And we couldn't even finish all the food, number one. Number two, we got such a range of stuff. And yeah, man, like open all hours of the day. This was our second trip to a convenience store today. I got 2 different kinds of coffee this morning. One was hot, one was cold, because they'll like do canned coffee and you can keep it. They'll warm some of them up, then the other ones will be in a cooler. It's such a fascinating concept.
Because Family Mart was the place that we... Yeah,
Family Mart. So like maybe we should mention a few for people that are wanting to travel to Japan. So there's Lawson's, there's 7-Eleven, Family Mart.
Mini Stop. There's
I
also a
mean,
natural
that should
Lawson's.
cover your bases.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
those places.
Mm-hmm.
I think we made the right choice of just choosing one. But yeah, I would be curious if someone else does the same thing, but like with a different convenience store.
Right. And the other beauty, the other beauty of it is, you can get a set of nail clippers. You can get some shampoo. You can there's an ATM. There's, I don't know, anything you could possibly want in the form of convenience, which is fantastic.
What I loved is when we went, it was during lunchtime, and I put this on my Instagram story. There was like 8 people reading manga, and then right next to it, there's a smoke room.
Oh my God. It's true. It's true. It is the proverbial watering hole of Japan, which is great. Okay. Any other thoughts on Japan, or I guess this trip that you want to share, or do you want to get into chatting about more big picture stuff and giving me an update on what's going on?
Well, I want to be selfish.
Yeah.
Because, as a plug, Justin and I are here to do a cool event. Justin, amazing videographer, is going to be posting about it soon. So that's why I think I don't want to discuss further, because
sure,
it's
well, to be honest, this podcast is probably going to be up way after.
Even better. And
okay, so you got to go watch it.
You got to watch it.
Hopefully on Dozfy's Instagram.
Yes.
/website.
And then I want to be selfish again. You invite me again. We could talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good call. Yeah, that's a good call.
I take pride that I've been on twice on the first season.
Yeah, so you have to do twice in the second season. Okay, cool. So we're in Japan for this super secret project. And we're just taking it as an inspiration vacation as well, right? Like, you obviously are just a trip to the plate store this morning. You were inspired to kind of like influence your piece tonight. So I think that's really, really cool. And
yeah. I think we've been here for now 24 hours. Yeah, we've been here now for 24 hours.
A lot of ground.
Yeah, and it's been great.
It's not 24 hours. It's 23 hours and 30 minutes.
Oh my God.
We landed 30 minutes ago yesterday.
And kudos to Justin for adjusting so quickly to a foreign time.
I actually did really well this time with jet lag. I didn't. I did fine. That was also really smart of us to like get to the hotel, not sleep, go straight to dinner, do some sightseeing, go see the Gundam, and then sleep.
Was my highlight of yesterday.
Yeah, but we were up at 4 a.m. this morning just fine. I mean,
it's true.
It's great. What else do you have in the pipeline for 2019? Are you continuing to foster chef relationships? Are you looking for more corporate things because there's a budget behind it? Are you trying to do a balance of both?
Yeah, I think, well, let's start off with last time we spoke, we did a podcast in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yep.
And at the time, we kind of, looking back, it's been a year. We've been kind of together to nurturing this live art aspect of Dozfy, and I find it fascinating. I could say then I was just intrigued if live art could be translated to people. More so, could I perform and give joy to other people how I get joy from making art? And it's still the same thing, but now it's more, it's executed well, especially with you. You really know how to capture not only the art piece made, the audience response, the whole events, and then creating a storyline from that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that has really been refined.
Yep.
And so that's that goal now, extending it to a new avenue, and is what you're touching upon is I've been very blessed and fortunate that the restaurant community accepted the menu art, and then from there expanded to this live art. And so that's always been the roots of that whole interaction. Now, like you asked about the sponsorships and stuff like that, it's a different ball game. It's a different space because everybody has their goals with an event. And I'm still trying to create joy from art
and provide value
exactly
to the sponsor they're in.
Exactly. And so it's much easier because, like this meal we were trying to just enjoy food and understand food and our relations and connections to it. There's a story already ingrained in food.
Right.
Like right now in this event, we're trying to figure out the story we're trying to achieve And it's a different sphere. It's a different challenge. I welcome that challenge. And I'm really glad for the great support and team that like you. So I'm not saying no to it, but I'm trying to understand more like can I accomplish it with the task they have at hand, and that's really hard. Because if you said it, and we spoke earlier, if you had to make live art about soap, I don't know what I could do. That's going to be tough.
Right.
So it's comes back to what story you want to tell. Because this is actually my wife and I were discussing this because we flew back to Houston for this trip, and I finally saw A Star Is Born.
Oh, I haven't watched it yet. I almost watched it on the flight here.
Oh man, I want you to watch it. And we need to talk about it. And we've seen the story, but what I was wondering with my wife is the main character. She got her break from the male character, and he felt that she wasn't saying what she needed to say, or what he thought was truthful to her as an artist. And then she, as any artist is and goes through, and I'm going through as well, seeking approval from an audience. And those two clashed, and I thought it was just a very true line of
anybody. It resonated.
Yeah. Any creative in the field it crosses this boundary and line over and over again. Like, what am I doing? Am I doing something meaningful to myself? Is it meaningful to the audience? Is there a happy medium between those two, the relationship and balance between the two? And that's what I struggle through every single time. So if you add a sponsorship to it, or you have me at home making a project for myself, I just do it. Is this worth what I think is worth doing?
Sure. So what's interesting to me, I want to get back to that, but I want to kind of bring people up to speed on your thoughts on doing these different creative projects and branding things in different ways, and then figuring out ways to fuse them together, right? And this is in relation to what you brought up with the menu art, the live art, and then what I saw as the third element, which was menu art experience / eat with your eyes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so the way that you were able to look at the parallels between this project, which was live art, which was, stereotypically at an event where you are a exhibitionist almost, versus menu art experience, right? Menu art experience, or Eat With Your Eyes, which was very much so you are a collaborator, you are a event partner almost, right?
Yeah.
So for you to kind of take a step back and say that I'm better off maybe branding Eat With Your Eyes as a live art experience, where does your head go with that? And what would you advise anybody who has a couple of these different projects in the pipeline? Because I'm also guilty of that too, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing is, I want to make sure I say this, like branding and all that. The whole creative and planning process, that doesn't really come through my brain. Like, this is good for the brand or stuff like that. I'm not that. I have a great people and team that help me maintain that. And then back to your original question, how do you go in between that? I think I've mentioned this before, or mentioned at least in the menu art experience. My art mentor explained that there's 3 components, and we've talked about this before: the artist, the art, and the audience. And in the beginning, I was focused on the art and what could I do for the art, and that kind of reflects back to me as an artist, figuring out what are my skill sets, what can I accomplish. But now I'm more focused on the audience, and if I better understand the audience, I already have the skill set to make the art
contextual.
Exactly. Execution is
right.
Yeah. I think now more than ever, ideas are, and this is kind of arrogant for me to say because it's so early, but ideas are the easy part. Execution is the hard part.
And I think that's been something that you've been very good at this whole time, is making sure that when you present an idea, it has some weight to it, right? Like, you don't present something like Eat With Your Eyes Like even the fact that you named it something so that chefs could, and this is something that my business partner talks about all the time, which is something that you can hang your hat on.
Mm-hmm.
Something that, like, if you would have just said, hey, I kind of want to do this creative thing where I draw at the table during the meal.
Yeah.
As opposed to going them and saying, hey, I want to do this event. It's called Eat With Your Eyes. I want to collaborate with you on the aesthetic of the food that you create in the way that it presents, so that the guests have a little bit more fun and interact with your food in a way that they wouldn't have normally done it before.
Right.
That is a much more, like, the way that you tie a bow around it and present it, I think is much more like,
it's much more layered.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is you were able to do that before executing it on your first one, right? And I think that says something, that there's something to be said about that, where you've never done an Eat With Your Eyes event before, but you were able to think through all of these steps before presenting it, right? So,
well, I'm curious because when you say that, like, I don't view it that way, only because I did that Airbnb menu art experience prior to that.
I guess, which was kind of a beta testing thing, but it takes a lot more to go to another chef and ask to be a part of their tasting menu. Like,
that's fascinating. I don't know. I never even thought about that.
I don't know of anybody else who's asking to be, like, other than maybe like wineries that want to do a pairing, which is not even getting involved in the food or the aesthetic, right? Yeah. Like, that's asking a lot of a chef, not in a bad way, but like the way that you were able to execute on that idea, which is weird because it's like execute on the idea before the execution,
right? It's like proof of concept.
There's something to be said there. So if there's somebody who has, you know, something that they want to present to their boss, or a new menu format, or even like a new dish, like they just have a dish in their head and they're a line cook and they just want to present it to their sous chef as like, I want to do a special on this weekend. What are some things that you think about to kind of like get yourself ready to pitch that? Like what's that script that you roll through in your head of like, this is what they're going to ask and this is what they're going to say? Because I mean, from how you present things to me, I know how you think about it, but I think that you can provide a lot of value in that space. So
okay. Can I reverse engineer this?
Yeah, sure.
Or at least, okay. So let's talk about the first time I pitched it to Derek. So kudos to Derek as well. He's the one who allowed me to try this project, and I don't even know how I pitched it to them. Oh, I know how I pitched it to them. I go, hey, would you ever do a collaboration, Derek? And it was on New Year's Eve, and we both been drinking. And so it's like, yeah, let's do it.
And so maybe here's something else that you hadn't thought about. Did you present it to Derek first because you knew that he had done other crazy, quote-unquote, collaborations with doing a cannabis dinner, doing a tattoos dinner, and you knew all of these that were in his portfolio already, so you were able to identify him as a good guinea pig for this idea?
Yeah. Well, when Derek and I first met, I knew the way he talked, and he told his past that he went to art school, so he knew he understood how I viewed the world.
Sure.
And I had a tiny glimpse of how he viewed the world. And so if you take that perspective, as we're both artists, whether it be visual, food, whatever, music, all that, if you're both artists, and the hardest thing for every artist who's working as an artist is the next project, to have an opportunity to work with someone you respect as well as you care for as a friend, I think anybody in a heartbeat would say yes. Right.
So me being the person who's trying to distill takeaways from this, it's to do your homework and try to find out what...
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
So I guess when we're talking about dissecting, what we did is this is probably going to be probably the most boring part of this conversation is Derek and I knew that we're creating an experience. But at the same time, we need to fill seats. We need to make sure it sustains itself. We asked all those questions during our second meeting. So yeah, the first yes on New Year's Eve was, hey, yeah, get your foot in the door. But two, prepare yourself. That's what I think a lot of artists in my field don't fully understand, and what I've been learning and still learning and making lots of mistakes is understanding who your audience is, and not just Chef Derek, but where he works at, what his colleagues and bosses will say and stuff like that.
Sure.
And that's what talking about homework. That's the homework that I don't think people realize. And when you ask the very beginning question is like, oh, you're doing it with chefs, or you're doing it with now sponsorship, stuff like that. Understanding your audience for the art, but you're also your audience of who you're doing this project with. What are their goals?
Right.
And if you can get all those aligned, then
from the get, basically, right? So for anyone listening, what are those initial questions that they're going to ask when you propose this project? Like, how much is it going to cost? How much do you cost? Right?
Yeah.
Like, how much are we going to charge?
Yeah.
Can
we
who's going to staff
on
it?
this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you going to charge? Like, who's going to staff it? Right? When are we going to do it? Are you going to try to take over my Saturday night dinner service and try to do this weird creative project? Or are you going to do it on a Monday at 5 p.m. when the restaurant's normally slow?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Like all these initial questions, if you can come armed with the answers to that to kind of like diffuse the bomb before it explodes kind of thing, I think that there's a lot of value there. And the other, you go for it.
Well, because I have notes about this.
Yeah.
So my thoughts is this is if you're pitching it to someone, whoever you're pitching it, and I apologize for cussing. I rarely cuss. Is what I always say is, why the fuck would they do this? Like, if you can't answer that in one or two sentences, you need to go back to the writing board and figure it out. And I'm reading this book, and it sounds true. In the notes I got, the book's called Getting Past No. And so really there's components of it is how you make a deal. How do you get past no? And that's like back to my original question is like, why would they do this? Is, well, they're going to say no to something, but jump on the one thing they're going to say yes to.
Oh.
Okay. So if they agree with you 99 things out of 100, that one thing they say yes to is going
to keep bringing that back up.
Exactly.
Keep reinforcing that this is a good idea because we both want to show that we're creative, or we both want to show that we support the arts, right? Like in your case, right? Like,
right. So, but right there, we're talking about that's it's easy for us to talk about this. It's easy for Chef Derek to agree with that, but his boss is going to be like, why should we do a creative art event?
Right.
But then it's like, hey, it's a new experience that highlights the restaurant. Okay, fair enough. Okay, that's one. Okay,
got it.
But then like, okay, well then, what all comes down is the logistics, and like you mentioned before, time and stuff like that.
Sure.
What it really comes down to is this experience worth value? And that's what you have to answer.
Yep.
Is this valuable to everybody?
Right.
And so the other 2 points I have, I always say, make it easy to say yes for the deal, and then make it hard for them to say no. And those are just easy concepts, but if you can answer those in a well-rounded pitch, I mean, you know,
you're on your way.
You're on your way.
So something else that you said earlier on kind of caught my eye, and I don't want to take this too long because I know we got to both put suits on in a hot second here. You mentioned the three pillars that you preach all the time, which is artist, art, and audience. And you mentioned that in the beginning it was more about the art, and now it's more about the audience. So what went through your head in making that shift, and how are you kind of fulfilling those needs, and how are you kind of like perceiving those? Is it because you feel a little bit more comfortable with the product itself? What motivated that switch, and what challenges are you dealing with right now with that?
Well, I think it's just a little more confidence in what I can do. A perfect example is if on Instagram, how many posts I have. That's how many times I've been drawing just for that menu art.
Sure.
And there's more I'm drawing, but beyond that. So I've gotten comfortable what my craft is. And so the next challenge as an artist is like, well, do you change your craft completely and learn something new, or you put it into a different environment and you adapt? And I'm just too old to learn something new, so I'm jumping to adapt. And the easiest step is just understanding the audience more.
Sure.
Because, like you said earlier, that I just never knew is like, how did you get Chef Derek? Because it's so hard to do this and this. Like, I had no clue. That how hard it is because I've never been a chef.
Totally.
And you bringing that up just makes me realize, like, I don't even know my audience in terms of not just diners. I felt I that's what I was trying to learn, but who I work with.
Right.
And so right there, just there's still a whole avenue to learn.
Right.
So it's just the next easiest step where I perceive things.
Yeah. So you're very good, and this is something that chefs are not always great at, is asking for direct feedback. And it's something that I've seen you do, especially when I started to see you make that transition between worrying more about the art and then worrying more about the audience. You would conduct almost, I mean, they were customer satisfaction surveys on steroids. You would sit people down, you would have elaborate conversations with them, you would ask them these sometimes probing questions that would give you some insight into how was their experience. What did they enjoy? What did they not enjoy? Would they recommend it to a friend? Did you learn that from somewhere, or was that something that you were just naturally curious about? And because there's a lot of fear behind asking those questions. So can you talk a little bit about that? And then I want to take that one more step further.
I mean, one, that's a great question. I think I need a lot of time to contemplate that. My initial reaction right now to that is just how I've been raised. My not to be stereotypical, but Asian household, my mom kind of was like a tiger mom, and nothing ever was good enough.
Right.
And so that's one component. The other component is just my internal fear that and I still fight with this, is like I want to perform the best I can. And it's not like a test where you get 100 out of 100.
Right.
It's you just do the best you can.
Sure.
But I can't stop not thinking. Like if I got 98 out of 100, what's the 2 points I didn't get?
So, but then my question goes to, do you ask those questions of the guests that you had at your experience to figure out what your score was?
Oh.
Because to me, most people who are like that, who perceive their work as not good enough, they look for that in the moment reaction of someone smiling when they take a bite, or the big reveal and their eyes light up or whatever. And then that is all the validation they need. And most people like that will not probe and ask the question of, what did you think about this? Would you recommend this to a friend?
Oh, that's fascinating.
Because it's like asking your mom when you're just got done with your recital performance, what did you think, right? Like her initial reaction or even just the fact that she didn't say that she was disappointed should be enough to validate. Do you know what I mean? So like there's something else in you that the fear doesn't exist, right? Like you are okay with taking that step further.
Well, I think it goes back to there's 2 points. I think what came up when you asked that is when I played competitive soccer. I mean, I did Olympic development programs, stuff like that. Like I was training in high school, tried to be on the Olympic team. And my mom, a perfect example is at halftime I would go to the sidelines, and I remember all the other parents be like, good job, you did it, and I go to my mom, I go, what do you think? And then she would just like tear me apart, be like, you didn't miss this, you did this, you let this happen.
But you saw that as valuable.
I saw that as valuable because I think that's just me, just like there's always room for improvement. And now reflecting back, is I love the journey. I love the work to get better. And so when you saying, oh, not many people do this, it's like, to me, that's just normal.
Because you're putting yourself on the fast track to improve a lot.
I mean, it's this is probably why I love listening to entrepreneur podcasts, because I always listen. You always know about their mistakes. You always know what they did wrong.
Right.
And that's my wife. I love her to death about this. It's like her initial reaction be like, I could tell if it's a good piece or not, and like she only likes 5 pieces, stuff like that. Yeah. So it's just how I've been. Just go about it. There's also the other part I was thinking is there's a window where people remember things. So if you broke, how I view it, if you broke all the art things apart. So music and food go so well together because
I agree.
Yeah, it's such a quick emotional reaction. You either love it or you don't, and it can transport you, which is, I think, it's a lot harder in the other art forms like writing. when you read and stuff like that.
Sure.
It's when you read a book over and again, it takes a while for you to get transported to another realm.
Because you're also left sometimes to your imagination, right? Like
Exactly.
someone describes a tropical beach, your tropical beach is different than my tropical beach.
Exactly.
But if I serve you an onigiri rice ball with sesame and salmon, that you can't perceive it as anything else, right? Like maybe you have some memories that will trigger, but for the most part, it's very tangible.
You nailed it. And so, and I've had this discussion. I'm not sure how true it is, but the beauty of visual arts, it's timeless. Like you could see a painting that was like, example, like, not even Renaissance, but Greek sculptures.
Sure.
I wonder how often people look at it and know that they're looking back in time.
Did you hear Seth Godin's? This is an aside, but did you hear Seth Godin's podcast on the Greek and Roman? Maybe it was just Roman or maybe just Greek statues, and how we display them as being white.
Yeah, they used to be painted.
And they used to be painted.
Yeah,
that's very interesting to me.
I didn't know, but I knew that from art history.
Yeah. It's a really good you'll have to listen to it.
I have to listen to that. Yes, definitely.
It's really good.
But and that's the thing is, and that's what I think is fascinating, and that goes back to the audience comment is we will tell the story to ourselves. We as humans, we will rationalize everything. Like a perfect example is we all back then thought the world was flat.
Right.
And one person goes, I don't think so. And here we are.
It's all flipped.
Right. And there's some people now who still think the world is flat.
Not wrong.
Right. So that in itself, to me, finds fascinating. It's like what we take for granted because we have no evidence or stuff like that, but we believe it's truth is fascinating. And so going back to asking questions about a meal, your experience, I'm almost, like you said, I'm probing. I want to know, one, it's hard enough to get people to come to an event. That's I actually have a book, like there's 8 truths. Like if you ask 10 people, go, hey, you want to go to an art museum? Maybe I bet you 2 people will go. Okay. Hey, do you want to go to a place you get free food? Oh, there's like 8 out of 10 people are going to come.
It's true.
So to eat with your eyes, I was like, it's a natural transition. You have to get food to get you in. And I was an RA in college.
Right.
If I didn't put free food on an event, no one would come.
Yeah.
So to me, I was just like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. So the thing that I wanted to ask next was, if you had to distill one question that it's given you the most ROI when you ask someone about an experience, or maybe something surprising where, like, I always get the most unique answers when I ask this. Like, if you did a 50-person event tomorrow and you had to speed question them all, what would be the one question that you would ask to get the most out feedback wise out of them?
That's so funny. Like people are like, oh, what's your favorite dish? What was the worst dish? We're gonna like those. To me, I've been done it for a while. Those are like kind of the primary questions. As someone who doesn't really understand their audience and what you're trying to achieve, right? And I'm not accusing anybody because I'm still going through that.
Sure.
The best question I have is, if you had to tell your friend or family to come to this event, what would you tell them?
Right.
That in itself has so much content to understand what the person is. And the reason why you can, like you said, dissect it is, like we talked about our previous projects, what's the story you want to tell?
Yep.
So right there, you find out what your audience, what they got from the event.
Right.
That's one thing. 2, you find out emotionally or what memories they got from that event. 3, how do they explain it to their friends?
Right.
So their brain is already kind of,
in sales mode.
Yeah. And so then what they're going to tell their friends.
Sure.
And what they're going to tell your friends is then what you need to say.
Yeah. Because that's the thing is, like, you can do all the marketing in the world, but the reputation is what people say behind your back kind of thing. Totally. I agree.
That's to me right now. I'm still learning, so I'm no expert at all. That's the best question that gives me all different answers, but tells me so much.
Because, I mean, say all you want about social media and whatever, word of mouth in our industry is still the most valuable form of marketing. Period.
Absolutely.
Period.
We went to Lawson because David Chang says, I think this is the best food you can get in Japan.
So true.
And it's a convenience store. And
So
I'm like,
true.
well, dang, we need to do that.
That's true.
I'm not going to get to a fancy restaurant.
For your artist's sake, that was a great way to kind of complete the circle on this, because we need to get ready very shortly to go to our super secret project. Is there anything that you want to leave people with as far as parting thoughts or things that you anything?
I guess it goes back to like, I think what you're doing with everything, but your podcast and stuff like that, it's grown, it's matured, it's getting distilled, all the process. So I want to say thank your listeners. This is great.
Totally.
As me personally, I would love to people. This is not a plug, but it is a plug in a way. One, just like go to Dozfy.net and just tell me your thoughts of what you're seeing, because the videos you made, or how I relayed the website, it's supposed to be an experience. And I'm still trying to fine tune it. So I would love to see people going that. So just more things I can improve upon.
Totally.
That's my concept. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on the show, my man.
It was awesome.
We did it. You're in outro land now. Thank you so much. I appreciate your ears more than you'll ever know. Hey, by making it to the end, you're the type of person that I want to speak to directly. This little production is constantly growing. If you enjoyed this episode, if you like what I'm trying to do with this show and want to make sure more people can find us, a free way to help out that takes less than 3 minutes is to leave The Emulsion a great review on iTunes. If you didn't enjoy this show, please also leave a review. I'm happy to take any constructive feedback you've got. If you want to learn more about supporting this show with your hard-earned cash, patreon.com/Justin Khanna is the place to do that. I've got tiers starting at just $1 per month. Let's say you just like being involved through suggesting stories to be covered or asking questions to my interview guests. You can stay up to date by following along on Twitter or Instagram. That is linked up in the description for your convenience, or always available on JustinKhanna.com. If you're on YouTube and listening, you can take this show on the go, because this is available on all podcast platforms, including Spotify. And if you prefer video versions of things like my interview shows or the shorter intermezzo episodes, and you're listening audio only, please check out my YouTube channel to see more of that. Now's normally where I'd say my name is Justin Khanna, and I hope you have a good one, but you've probably got another podcast episode to listen to, so I'm just gonna get out of the way here. Excuse me. Pardon me.